Welcome back to the Get Off The Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Hi, and welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. I'm Chuck Blakeman, and today we're going to talk about why you can't empower people and why you should only attempt to engage them. Let's jump in. In the last podcast, we talked about what fancy people call organizational design, or the underlying operating system of an organization. Most companies still build around the classic top-down pyramid scheme inherited from the military and fiefdoms of the Middle Ages, where decisions are made at the top to be carried out at the bottom. You know, human beings at the top, human doings at the bottom. And then we talked about what was in the middle of that pyramid scheme, middle managers, and how there is no research, zilch, nada, none, that supports the existence of managers. But plenty of research that says if teams of 3 to 15 people didn't have a manager, that they would function and perform better without them, be more productive, make much better decisions, and they would quit much less often. We suggested replacing this worn-out corporate top-down pyramid scheme with a new operating system that functions from the edges in and the center out, nothing top-down. I call it organic leadership, and all of the research and data shows it works better. If you haven't done so, take a listen and see what you think. At worst, it will cause you to think about how we organize businesses, whether there are 3 people or 3,000 in your organization. In this podcast, I want to address one of the subtle but very powerful mindsets that we inherited from this whole middle management thing, empowerment. My objective in this podcast is to help you see that we should stop trying to empower people, which I believe is an old and unhelpful patriarchal idea, and that we should instead focus on engagement, which is one form of great leadership. My job is not to empower, but to engage. Every month, the Gallup organization does an engagement survey of a few thousand companies to understand what percentage of people are fully engaged at work, really wanting to be there and excited to contribute in their position into the overall betterment of the company. And every month for the last few decades, the survey has shown that somewhere between 28% and 32% of people are engaged in their work, which means 70% of people in most companies are just phoning it in, doing the bare minimum so as to not get fired. I can't think of another data point that is more depressing than people not wanting to be where they are at work and only caring to do the bare minimum to make money so they can go home and make meaning away from work. Apparently, all that empowerment stuff hasn't worked. But if you've been listening to this series on the participation age, you'll know that I have identified hundreds of giant organizations and thousands of smaller ones with nearly 100% engagement by the people who work there. Spoiler alert, it wasn't because the wielders of power shared some of their power to empower other people. It is because the leaders stopped patronizing others by, graciously sharing their power and instead started engaging people, which is a very different thing. I want to start by saying we have come by this focus on empowering people honestly, and the entire consulting world is complicit. Employee engagement consulting is a more recent way of putting lipstick on the pig of the top-down factory system management model, still the most common way most businesses organize themselves. Employee engagement consulting was coined first in an Academy of Management Journal article by William Kahn in 1990, and will likely go the way of all other lipstick that promised to beautify the pig by hiding the truth. From our perspective, it is more sensible to approach engagement as an overhaul of how we lead people, not as a process or methodology for consulting. People will not become engaged by employee engagement efforts, but by transforming the very structure under which they labor, from the old top-down industrial age factory system structure to a participative organic operating system. People are not engaged because someone in human resources came up with 59 awesome engagement ideas. Yeah, that's a real article out on the interweb. People have become engaged and will become engaged because leaders are creating a supportive and inclusive environment around those people that encourages them to be fully human at work, not human doings, but human beings, which means they are not just allowed, but in fact required to make decisions locally as a whole, messy, creative individual. Which brings us back to the topic of empowerment. In order to understand engagement, we have to first understand empowerment. Trying to empower people is like trying to make an acorn into more of an acorn. It's futile and it's an unproductive exercise. I can't do anything to add to an acorn's acornishness. It arrives in my hand fully an acorn with all the potential of becoming a great oak tree without me adding anything to the acorn itself. An acorn doesn't need my power. It has its own. In the same way, people show up on the first day of work fully empowered as to who they are, and there's nothing I can do to add to that empowerment. They don't need my power. They have their own. To attempt to empower them is patronizing, and it communicates, I'm still the only one with power, and the only reason you have any power at all is because I'm going to grant you a little bit of mine. Think about that. True empowerment is not granted. It's just the opposite. Empowerment already exists inside the person. Engagement is the absence of the heavy hand, the absence of black plastic over the seed, the freedom that inspires someone to use their own empowerment to become a great oak tree right where they work. We don't make the acorn more capable of being a great oak tree, and we don't make people more capable of the vast potential already inside them. This is a very difficult realization to come to for people in power, to realize that their power cannot make me more empowered. I can only do that for myself. So what do we do instead? We engage people. Let's look at the difference, and the difference is simple. We don't empower, we engage. Empowerment is on them, engagement is on us. One of the primary tasks of strategic leaders in any organization is to engage their people, not to empower them. People need reasons to use their own self-realized acornishness to become great oak trees. The act of engagement is very different than any attempt to empower. Empowerment says you inherently have no power. I'm going to give you some of mine so you can flourish. Otherwise, you wouldn't. It's my kindness and my generosity that allows you to grow. Engagement is quite different. It doesn't assume the seed, or in this case, the person, needs me to add power to them so they can become fully something. Engagement doesn't add to the person. It adds to the environment around the person. Let me say that again. Engagement doesn't add to the person. It adds to the environment around the person. It creates the optimal conditions for personal engagement and for someone to realize their own power. Empowerment is me adding power to you. It's adding my power to you. Engagement does not attempt to add anything to the person. It is the addition of sunlight, soil, food, water, so that the conditions exist for me to release all of my inherent power and become everything I can become. So empowerment attempts to add to the person as if the person has a deficit, in this case, of power. Engagement adds to the environment around the already empowered person and just supports them to just take off in their growth. If the environment is right, the seed will sprout and grow into all in its own inherent capabilities without me adding anything to the acorn. If the external environment is controlling and suffocating, that's empowerment, the seed will remain a seed and you will have 30% engagement, not 100. Great strategic leaders don't empower. They provide a great environment to grow. They provide motivating reasons to get involved, great leadership, great vision, tools, value, resources, guidance, training, metrics, mentoring, and relationships. Give people water, sunlight, food, and warmth. Give them a good reason to give it their all, and they will. And remember, empowerment is fully on them, on each individual. They already have what they need to become great oak trees. The opposite is true of engagement. Engagement is 100% on us as strategic leaders. If we do not add the right things to the environment around someone, or if we add the wrong things or take away the food, the light, the sunlight, they will never flourish. And if they want to become a great oak tree, they will likely take their acornishness somewhere else where it is respected for all the potential it already has and where they can be given the resources to become everything they want to become. Semco, a company in Brazil, is a beacon of engagement. It is a manufacturing company, and the average employee turnover every year in manufacturing in general is in the 33 to 35% range. You can expect to lose 1/3 of your people every year. Semco is different. It focuses on providing the right conditions for individual growth. It focuses on engagement, and it experiences less than 2% of their people quitting every year. 35% normally in fact manufacturing, 2% at Semco. As a result, they have exponentially higher productivity, exponentially higher profitability and retention than any other manufacturing company in most countries. It's important to say engagement is a process, not a result. It entails one very simple but not easy organizational design change. We've talked about it a little bit before. We're going to talk about it more in other podcasts. Distributed decision making. This allows and requires decisions to be made locally by those who will carry them out. This organizational design shift will do more to make work actually work than any lipstick we have applied to the factory system top-down organizational pig in the last 120 years. The switch from top-down empowerment to lateral engagement requires great leadership. Great leaders are important here because they understand that the art of leadership is to know how few decisions the leader needs to make, and to instead teach others how to make those decisions. We'll talk more about the hallmark of great leadership, making very few decisions, in another podcast on what great leadership actually entails. For now, we can say that the more decisions get pushed across the organization to the people who must carry them out, the more engagement will increase. This practice of distributed decision-making is not new or forward-thinking. It existed long before the factory system emerged, as decisions were made locally in every shop, every small shop worldwide. We're just proposing that we combine the great technological advances of the industrial age with the time-honored ability of human beings to make great decisions and to make localized decisions where they must be carried out. Never in a vacuum, we'll talk more about that, always in collaboration with strategic leaders, but still decisions made locally and not by managers, but by teams. We'll talk more about how to make local decisions in another podcast, and look for two-step decision-making as one of those. Distributed decision-making is the same concept that made work meaningful for the shoemaker before we put them in the factory and told them to bang a nail in the left boot. All we're proposing is that we go back to where we came from before the factory system, rehumanizing the workplace by giving everybody their brain back so that they can be fully engaged. Whether you're pushing a broom or writing code, work should not be an unwelcome interruption in an otherwise great day, and it shouldn't be a place filled with office daycare centers where we are supervised like 7-year-olds and then oddly empowered once in a while as a gift from above. It should be a place where we run to because it's one of the many places in our integrated lives where we have the precious opportunity to be fully adult, fully engaged, make decisions like we do in our own personal lives, and then to make meaning, not just make money. We all intuitively know that moving away from empowering people and moving toward engaging them through distributed decision-making is the right thing to do. The Deloitte Human Capital Trends Survey says fully 90% of the thousands of companies surveyed understand that in order to stay competitive in the emerging work world, they must, as I'm quoting from the survey, race to replace structural hierarchies with a network of teams. There's no manager involved in that. These teams are released to take action on their own, as the survey says. We're not proposing just better engagement processes or a more human resource focus, better management, or any other quick fix. We're proposing reorganizing business around creating better engagement environments that provide the soil, water, food, sunlight, and warmth to grow and contribute like every company wished everyone would do. And the best way to engage people is distributed decision making, the one simple but not easy practice that rehumanizes work for everyone, and the one practice that will allow them to be fully engaged and become the great oak tree they envision for themselves. Are your people fully engaged at work? Are you one of the very few that have 70, 80, 90, 100% engagement, not the standard 30%? Let's stop trying to share our power with people and create an environment that lets them use their own power to become everything they can be and what we always hoped they would become. Let's stop empowering. Let's focus instead on engaging. I'll see you in the next podcast.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.